Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it looks like you got a relatively normal week. Plus Jack Harlow. It's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. Well, at least the Hot 100's relatively stable. For now, not gonna lie, it is genuinely uncanny to focus on this when there's so much else going on that might supersede it, but hey, someone's gotta be the cantankerous critic of a broken system in the desperate hope that something inevitably changes for the better. Right? Well, anyway, the top 10, where for another week we don't talk about Bruno by the Encanto cast just squatting on top at number 1. But its streaming margin is shrinking, and even if sales had an uptick, the radio never properly came around, and that means it's vulnerable to heat waves by Glass Animals at number 2. This was the week it took radio dominance, and with stable streaming, it could very well make a play for the number 1. And that means I'm stuck placing my faith in an unlikely source if I don't want that to happen. ABCDEFU by Gail up to number 3. Better sales overall, and while she lags on streaming and the radio, a lot of this becomes a margins game because she has stronger airplay traction. If there's a time to make the push, it kind of is now. And that leaves Easy on Me by Adele to slide down to number 4. Streaming is down, radio's falling off, looks like folks are finally getting tired of this one. And unfortunately, that opens the door for Super Gremlin by Kodak Black up to number 5. Which alongside solid streaming has had a really solid radio run. Still lags enough I don't see it as a serious contender yet, but I would prefer we don't give this any more attention. Hell, it moved over Stay by Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber at number 6, which actually wound up being mostly stable this week, and that's followed up by Ghost by Justin Bieber up to number 7, where the radio traction might be slowing down, but it still has momentum. Certainly enough to get over Shivers by Ed Sheeran at number 8, which is just slipping into freefall. Now here's actual surprise. Bad Habits by Ed Sheeran is actually back in the top 10 at number 9, and it's because of the rock remix he made with Bring Me the Horizon that went quasi-viral, stabilized its radio, and drove a sudden sales revival. Now, sadly, that version did not get credited on the Hot 100, but it is still a way better remix that has any right to be. Maybe a sign you should push more of your rock-leaning songs, Ed. Tides is right there. It's a possible single. Make it happen. Anyway, Cold Heart, PNAU remix by Elton John and Dua Lipa scraped back into the top 10 because it's dominant on sales, and it's got enough streaming and radio to prop itself up. God, I'm just ready for this song to just go away. Let's make that happen. But speaking of which, our losers and dropouts. We're in the latter category. We saw a range of mid-level songs fall short, likely not make the year-end list, like Chosen by Blast, Tyga, and Ty Dolla $ign, or For Tonight by Giveon, or Whiskey and Rain by Michael Ray. Can't say I'm complaining about any of those. Meanwhile, our losers consist of Still Dre by Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg only dropping off a little bit to 43, then the debuts utterly collapsing like The Joker and the Queen by Ed Sheeran featuring Taylor Swift at 64, Bussin' by Nicki Minaj and Lil Baby at 72, and Worst Day by Future at 73. Not really complaining about those either. And well, alright, the rest. In the continued losers, Don't Play That by King Von and 21 Savage fell down to 86. Freedom Was a Highway by Jimmy Allen and Brad Paisley hit 84. And Do We Have a Problem by Nicki Minaj and Lil Baby just cannot get any traction at 44. And outside of those, it seems like the songs that should be doing better than they are, like P-Power by Gunna featuring Drake at 75, or even Oh My God by Adele at 45. I honestly thought that one was locked in for a major radio run and it just hasn't happened. Weird. Now for our returns and gains, well, only one of the former, that being When I'm Gone by Alesso and Katy Perry at 90, and I can't say I've got a lot of faith that's gonna stick around, but our gains are actually kind of interesting. For starters, we had the expected seasonal Nashville radio push, so One Mississippi by Kane Brown went up to 36, Doing This by Luke Combs went to 49, and Never Say Never by Cole Swindell and Lainey Wilson saw a big rebound to 55. And on that note, Fingers Crossed by Lauren Spencer Smith turned things around at 39. I think I'll chalk that up to the radio here too. But when you dig into the rest, Well, Numb Little Bug by M. Bayhold is catching a little bit of attention at 68 with some sales help, and Light Switch by Charlie Puth is on a radio run up to 29, not much of a surprise. But why is You Right by Doja Cat and The Weeknd getting yet another run with radio that just hasn't ended at 33? I thought we were all moving on to Woman or Get Into It, Yuh. Why is anyone still paying attention to this mediocre song? Well, anyway, we only got a neat half dozen new arrivals this week. This might actually be a little shorter, so let's get things started with number 100, Give Heaven Some Hell by Hardy.
Crank it loud, hold it down till I get there, and when I do, I hope you got some new stories to tell. Till then, give heaven some hell.
You know, there's a part of me that's just trying to live and let live with Hardy as a figure in modern Nashville country, predominantly as a writer and producer, but these days occasionally showing up on some songs of his own. But there is something about him that just rubs me the wrong way. Maybe it's how he calls his albums his Hicks tapes, or how so much of his career seems built on savvy connections and marketing rather than unique talent, or for how as many good songs as he has written, he's got a bunch more that are just outright crap. So him making this heartfelt tribute to an old friend who has passed to Go Give Heaven Some Hell is trying to inspire the same sort of pathos that a song like Cole Swindell's You Should Be Here had 6 years ago. And I mean, he's trying, but something is not clicking for me. The guitars are mostly warm, but there's no real bass presence or groove. The drums sound kind of weird with that really inconsistent cymbal. And then there's Hardy, who just completely struggles to convey any sense of personality, especially as a lot of the lyrics feel like only a slight reinterpretation of the same stock checklist cliches he crams into all the other songs. I just don't get the personal connection with this. It might be okay, but it's not something that pulls me back. Somehow I'm still disappointed though, just saying. Number 95, Pray by Jessie Murph.
It's something that I pray you'll never know.
We're doing another round of the Jessie Murph thing? Really? I last covered her on Billboard Breakdown way back in December with a dated, clunky song that wasn't good, so I had rock bottom expectations for this. And that's appropriate, because this is also pretty damn bad. And it's kind of startling just how many things don't seem to work. The production once again feels really dated in its ponderous, dour vibe, and the wispy percussion suddenly ramping up the tempo after that piano-driven, slower first verse. It's a mood shift that doesn't work for the atmosphere. And again, when your singer once again sounds like the cross between Baby Rexha and Tones and I, and frequently will clip the edge of the mix with her vocal pickup, you need all the help and atmosphere you can get. What's worse is that the writing once again feels rough, and reminds me that if her sonic comparisons didn't have a lot of unearned confidence, I'd probably tolerate them even less, because Jessie Murph's wallow in angst is a much worse look, starting off on the bad relationship front before it spirals into a lot of depression, alcohol abuse, and a strained parental relationship where the faster tempo actually requires delivery that doesn't match the content. And if I'm gonna nitpick here, you're setting yourself up for a lot of undue confusion with the mixed target of you on the hook, where it starts off as more universal, but then it's clearly directed at someone, and it makes a messy song even clunkier. Yeah, so another swing and a miss. It's not any good. Next. Number 91, Poppin by Yeat.
I'm in that Tonka, baby, you come show me love. I'm fuck with nobody, little bitch, I show you none.
I've seen a fair amount of buzz circulating around this guy, an Oregon rapper who dropped his first album in September of last year after a string of mixtapes, to then follow up with another project in February of this year, and oh wow, this isn't good either. For one, why does Yeat sound like a fusion of Future or any interchangeable Travis Scott wannabe wallowing in even deeper auto-tune? And instead of having an actual strong groove behind him, we've got a buzzed out trap clunker where the bass is swallowed up in texture, the hi-hat is rickety and has no punch to it, and the gloss of the watery melody can barely claw three. And given that his content at this point is just stock drug abuse, shooting people, and flexing with 4 bars passing for the one verse in between the hooks, yeah, somehow I get the impression I'm not missing much from this at all. And speaking of which, number 61, Banking on Me by Gunna.
I know I got it, I'm all in the body and nobody got a clue. We in the coupe pulling up, boy, the private at G5 for only two. I really like it, I won't stay excited, don't wanna get tired of you.
Okay, let me get this straight. Gunna originally had this song on the deluxe version of his new album. He pulled the song and then re-released it for Valentine's Day. And I'm stuck with the question, who the hell listens to Gunna for Valentine's Day? But apparently enough people do, because this actually charted. And you know what? I actually kind of get it, because this is actually alright in cultivating the vibe. The supple bass supporting the muted piano before Metro Boomin brings in the trap beat. Gunna's lack of a more aggressive personality is actually a surprisingly decent fit for something this low-key. And even if the entire song is exaggerated luxury porn and graphic sex, and Gunna just kind of shows his complete limitations of a frontman by the end of the hook where he just kind of lets it trail off, for an audience that is more receptive to the sound, I can see them getting behind this. Now granted, it's hard to ignore just how much his vocal timbre starts resembling Drake on a song like this, and Drake's got the catalog to do it better, but you know what? If you want it from Gunna, if it has to be from him, I don't mind this. Not bad. Number 42, Ahhh Ha by Lil Durk.
Go get your gun. They dropping locations. I'm getting it done. Fuck tweeting, we sliding. The feds come.
So I genuinely don't want to talk about the Lil Durk and Youngboy Never Broke Again beef anymore. It's gotten people killed. More closer to Lil Durk, for whom I get the impression he'd rather be doing anything else rather than touching this, as it's dragging him back to trauma and street-level violence he's trying to escape, despite an audience of teenage white boys who are living vicariously through this entertainment with little comprehension of the very real human toll it's taking, which is likely why this song charted in the first place, and Youngboy's already fired back. And you know it's a bad situation when Lil Durk starts off the song trying to create as much plausible deniability as possible before he snaps back, not just in calling Youngboy's bluff in his attacks, as Lil Durk can very easily make this real, and the hangers-on who are trying to flex with their own violent tendencies on Instagram, which he calls out, the police might as well be calling for you. But then he also calls out the trolls in the stands who keep throwing the late King Von's name into all this, because they're corny-ass perpetually online dipshits who have never been checked in their lives before. And yes, DJ Academics belongs in that pile as well. That being said, this is also one of those cases where bringing more attention to it only agitates the problem, and Lil Durk outright admits that he's going against the advice of all of his peers like Eneli Choppa by even engaging, and then he references Youngboy's baby mama, who was in a relationship with King Von at one point before his death and now has an OnlyFans based off of that notoriety. I mean, I've said before, there's no rules in beef, and it's not like Youngboy hasn't gone further here, but people have already died in the wake of this. And I get the feeling that Lil Durk will have to be the bigger man and walk away, because, let's be real, Youngboy's paranoid ass has nothing else, and he's on a take everyone down with me downward spiral, especially as the police will not hesitate to get involved. I mean, folks, this helps nothing. And even if the gothic touches on the piano and Chicago drill and trap percussion goes pretty hard, sometimes you need to see the bigger picture. Both these rappers have more potential than wasting it on shit like this. And while that'll leave money on the table, as a certain amount of irresponsible fans will egg this on, I can't endorse it. And finally, number 18, Nail Tech by Jack Harlow.
My book bag up and my chain hitting like bow, bow, bow. King's back in his hometown when them wheels hit and I touch down, nigga.
There's a part of me that's legit kind of pleased that I was relatively on board with Jack Harlow earlier than most. Now, to me, he's a rapper with a high floor and a low ceiling, but hey, solid technical competence with swagger and decent taste, that will get you somewhere. So to see him debut this high, that was kind of interesting to me. And you know, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that Jack Harlow delivered pretty much exactly what I was expecting, but here we have a pretty good track, just not exactly a great one. The horn loop that gradually fleshes out with hints of strings and keys, but what'll probably throw people will be some of the squishier effects around the percussion that comes in with hints of drill, with the heavier bass coming in on later beats than the one, and that gives the song a bit of a different rhythm to it. And that actually translates to the content as well, where you'd think it'd just be another flex from Jack Harlow, or maybe even a Mo Money, Mo Problem song, but I actually like the details where Jack Harlow shoves it off script. flexing his health and his sobriety, trying to stay down to earth and finding girls like that too, and noticing folks are flashing a lot of money that they don't actually have, a lane that he actively wants to avoid. Now, it's still braggadocious to a fault. That line about not coming from head but daring her to try, I go back and forth whether or not that was idiotic or inspired, but you know what, he'll blow off those who are trying to hop on the bandwagon now, but I kind of dig the sly provocations that generally feel more clever than they probably have to be. Maybe not quite as humble, but definitely canny and very self-aware. So yeah, I actually wind up liking this a solid bit, and hell, after this week, it's pretty much running away with the best here. Worst is going to Pray by Jessie Murph, but I am tempted to give it to Lil Durk on principle here. If the production was a little bit worse, I probably would have. But next week, again, things might be a little bit more slow, a little reasonable, but hey, maybe Avril Lavigne might get Bite Me to chart. We can hope, right? But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.